Disclaimer. Long text. If you're not into reading, this is not the place for you. Sorry. I am also fairly new to Reddit, so feel free to delete if not allowed. As a survivor of a crime myself, I believe it's important to shed light on cases that tends to be overlooked or not is spoken on. Media's is others. I like to dig through stories that aren't necessarily the most known. Evil exists in all shapes, everywhere in the world, and their actions should not be forgotten. Otherwise, how can we learn from it? If it gets the interest of anyone, I might post some others. I mostly focus on cases that happened in North America. Hence the title of my post. Hopefully, this will help, in any way, shape or form. Remember the victims of evil acts. #Amp. #X200B. Case. Gregory Despres. Victims. Fred Fulton, 74, and Veronica, Verna, Decary, 70. Location: Minto, New Brunswick, Canada. Date: April 23, 2005. #Amp. #X200B. The murderer. Gregory Allen Despres was born to Jean Despres and Glendon Myers in July 1982. In the town of Minto, New Brunswick, Canada. When he was still a little boy, his parents separated. Mother and son then moved to Massachusetts, where Gregory easily made friends. He was known for being a social butterfly, and was involved in many community activities, like sports and cadets. He also worked a couple of part-time jobs. Needless to say, for a boy his age, he was quite successful. Sadly, teenage years can be extremely challenging, especially for a 16-year-old boy estranged from his father most of his life. Jenny Despres started noticing significant changes in her son's personality, but dismissed it as him being rebellious. By the age of 17, Gregory had severed all ties with his mother and moved back to Minto, New Brunswick, with his father, where the two were finally reunited. For 2 years, Jenny had no contact with her son, until she, herself, made the decision to return to Minto. She could not suspect the drastic changes in her son's personality. Gregory had become isolated from society, locking himself in his residence for long period of times. Neighbors reported rarely seeing him outside. A concerned Jenny asked her son if he was abusing drugs, which he vehemently denied. Unfortunately, Despres' mental state continued to deteriorate beyond the point of no return. #Amp. #X200B. The victims. By all accounts, Freddie Fulton, 74, and Veronica, Verna, Gertrude Decary, 70, had only one known enemy: their young neighbor. The elderly couple was loved by everyone. Fred was known for his talent at playing guitar, especially country music, and for being a very nice old fella. Verna was born in 1935, in Halifax, NS, but had moved to Minto, New Brunswick, where she lived happily for the rest of her life. She was, according to people, a bit more reserved than her common-law husband, but had a great heart. The couple had been living as neighbors to Myers, at a short distance on foot. #Amp. #X200B. The murders. On the evening of April 23, 2005, Gregory Despres left his trailer and made his way to the residence of Fred Fulton and Veronica Decary. Despres managed to gain access to the house by cutting his way through a screen door with a knife, then kicking in the second door. After entering the residence, he went to the couple's bedroom where he stabbed Veronica Decary to death. a total of 30 times. Her death was listed as the result of massive blood loss. As he witnessed his wife being butchered, Fred Fulton attempted to escape, before Gregory caught up to him and stabbed him 31 times. The elderly man appeared to have put up a fight, as he had wounds on his hands, indicating he had grabbed at the murder weapon and tried to fend off his killer. Injuries were also found on his feet, suggesting he had kicked at the killer. Sadly, the elderly man was no match to the enraged Gregory, who decapitated him. His cause of death was listed as sharp force trauma to the neck with decapitation. Experts say he would have survived the other wounds. The head of Mr. Fulton was found in a pillowcase under the kitchen table. The murder weapon was never identified, or known to the public, as Despres was traveling with a chainsaw, a knife, brass knuckles, and a homemade hatchet, and AMP X200B. The aftermath. After committing his gruesome crimes, Gregory Despres packed his weapons in Fred Fulton's car, then headed for the United States. Upon arrival at the U.S. border, the patrol let him through, because, according to him, there was no apparent reason to hold him for suspicions. Considering the two bodies had not yet been found, he did confiscate Despres' weapons and asked him his motives for carrying such artillery. To which Despres replied he was a hired assassin from the U.S. government and had murdered over 700. The Border Patrol let him through. Despres ditched his car, and was then hitchhiking, when the police discovered him walking down a road, and decided to proceed with a routine check. He was detained and extradited back to Canada for a court appearance for a previous assault on Fulton's son-in-law. In 2004, the day prior, Fulton's daughter had discovered the bodies of her father and Werner at their residence. The RCMP quickly suspected Despres, due to his history with the elderly couple. He was originally scheduled to be trialed on September 5, 2006, for the double murders. However, due to a disagreement with his lawyer, the trial date had to be moved to January 8, 2007. His trial was to be heard by a judge, not a jury. Judge Judy Clendening presided over the case. The prosecution focused its case on the blood trail, DNA evidence, and his relations with Fulton. According to the prosecution, Despres and Fulton were at odds over the waterline, and the conflict worsened when Despres started using recreational drugs. On February 1, Despres accused his new lawyer of working for Al-Qaeda, but his request for his lawyer to be fired was refused by the judge. Ed Derra, lawyer of Despres, requested his client be sent for a psychological evaluation, to which the judge agreed, thus ending the trial. Dr. Louis Theroux determined that Despres was unfit to stand trial, believing that he had paranoid schizophrenia. His mother backed this up. Another expert testified that Despres was fit to stand trial and that medication could help any mental disorders he was dealing with. The judge disagreed with that theory and ruled that Gregory Despres was unfit to stand trial. On April 26, during the second trial, Fred Mowat, Fulton's grandson, testified that his grandfather feared Despres and needed medications to sleep at night. They also had an argument, in 2004, over noises coming from Despres' trailer, during which Despres pulled a knife on him. On March 5, 2008, Justice William Grant found Gregory Despres guilty of causing the death of Fred Fulton and Werner Decary. However, the judge agreed with the defense that he was not criminally responsible for his actions at the time. He is now being held at the Shepherdie Healing Center. part of the Dorchester Penitentiary. He has yet to mention his actions or accept any responsibility for his crimes. #Amp. #X200B. Final words. Neighbors can often be a blessing. If you're lucky, you may find a generous soul and a lifelong friend in them. Or, most likely than not, they will simply leave you alone. However, who can really know what is going on in someone's head? If your neighbor had evil intentions against you, would you see it coming? #Amp. #X200B. Sources. **